The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 12 different species sat around the massive circular table, each one looking at the holographic display that showed Earth spinning slowly in the center. The blue and green planet looked so small, so innocent. None of the aliens around the table thought it looked dangerous. That was their first mistake. High Counselor Thaxal raised one of his forearms. His gray skin was covered in the ritual markings that showed his high rank among the Zarathi people. When he spoke, his voice came out as a series of clicks and whistles that the translation machines turned into words everyone could understand. "We are here today to decide the fate of humanity," Thaxal announced. "For the past 50 years, we have watched these creatures spread across the galaxy like a virus. They take resources without asking. They build colonies on worlds we have marked as protected. They ask too many questions about technology they are not ready to understand." Around the table, heads nodded. Some of the council members had tentacles instead of heads, and these waved in agreement. Others had multiple eyes that all blinked at the same time to show they agreed. The Cretal representative, a being that looked like a walking tree, spoke next. Its voice sounded like wind blowing through leaves. "The humans have no respect for the old ways. When we told them that the Kepler system was sacred to the ancient ones, they built a mining station there anyway. When we explained that faster than light, travel should only be used by mature species, they built bigger engines. They are like children playing with fire," added the Nexari delegate. Her people looked almost human, except for the blue skin and the fact that they had no hair anywhere on their bodies. Dangerous children who might burn down the whole house. Ambassador Zektar of the Velthari shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His people were peaceful and quiet, with large eyes that could see emotions as colors around other beings. Right now, he could see fear radiating from most of the council members like red smoke, but underneath the fear he saw something else that worried him more. He saw anger, and anger made people do stupid things. "Perhaps we should try to guide them better," Zektar suggested. His voice was soft and musical, like water flowing over stones. "The humans are young, yes, but they learn quickly. If we teach them the right way to do things, we have tried teaching them," Thaxal interrupted. "They smile and nod and say they understand. Then they go back to their ships and do exactly what they want anyway. No, Ambassador Zektar, the time for teaching is over." The holographic display changed. Now it showed human ships moving between star systems. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. In just 50 years, humanity had spread to 47 different star systems. Some of the older species in the council had taken thousands of years to spread that far. "Look at them," said the Drakmor representative. His people were covered in scales and had teeth like a shark. They breed like insects and spread like a disease. Soon there will be humans everywhere, and there will be no room left for anyone else. "That is not true," Zektar said, but his voice was getting quieter. He could see that no one wanted to listen to him. "Humans have shown that they can share space with other species. On New Geneva, humans and Altarians live together peacefully. On Kepler Station is exactly the problem," Thaxal snapped. "We told them not to build there. We explained why that system was important to galactic history. They built it anyway and then invited us to come see how wonderful it was. This is not cooperation. This is children showing off after breaking the rules." The council chamber fell silent again. In that silence, Zektar could hear the hum of the space station around them. The council met on a massive station that had been built in neutral space, far from any star. It had been here for over 1,000 years, and in all that time, the council had never made a decision like the one they were about to make. "I call for a vote," Thaxal announced. "All in favor of complete isolation of the human species?" One by one, arms and tentacles and appendages rose into the air. The Zarathi voted yes. The Cretal voted yes. The Nexari voted yes. The Drakmor voted yes. 8 more species voted yes, each one certain that they were doing the right thing. Only Zektar kept his hands on the table. "The vote is 11-1, Thaxal announced. "Beginning immediately, all contact with humanity is forbidden. No trade, no communication, No diplomatic meetings. Human ships will be turned away from all council. Space. Human diplomats will be sent back to their own territory. Any council member caught helping humanity will be expelled from the council. Zektar stood up slowly. His large eyes were filled with something that looked like sadness, but also fear. "You are making a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "Humans are not like other species. When you corner them, they do not surrender, they adapt. They find new ways to survive. And they remember who their friends were when things got bad. They are primitives," Thixal said with a laugh that sounded like grinding metal. "They have barely learned to leave their own solar system. What can they possibly do to us?" Zektar gathered his things and walked toward the door. Before he left, he turned back to look at the council one more time. "You think their noise was the problem," he said. "You are about to learn that their silence is much more dangerous." The door slid shut behind him, and the council members looked at each other. Some of them seemed less sure now, but the vote was done. There was no going back. Within hours, the orders went out across the galaxy. Every council world received the same message. Cut all ties with humanity immediately. Do not answer their calls, do not trade with them, do not help them. Treat them as if they do not exist. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez was in her office at the Global Space Agency when the first reports started coming in. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes, and she had spent the last 10 years trying to keep peace between humanity and the Council. She was good at her job, which made what happened next even more painful. "Ma'am," her assistant said as he rushed into her office, "we're getting reports from all our diplomatic missions. The Council worlds are refusing to see our ambassadors. Trade ships are being turned away at the borders, and we just lost contact with the diplomatic station at Centauri Prime." Elena stared at her assistant for a long moment. Then she sat down, heavily in her chair. "Get me President Chen on the secure line," she said, "and start calling in all our people from Council space. All of them. Right now." Over the next few days, the news got worse. Human colonies that had been buying food and medicine from Council worlds suddenly found their orders canceled. Research stations that had been working with alien scientists were told that the partnerships were over. Worst of all, the Council sent a single message to Earth and then they stopped answering completely. The message was short and cold. "Humanity has proven itself unworthy of galactic citizenship. Until you learn to follow the rules and respect your betters, you will remain alone. Do not contact us again." Elena read the message 3 times before she understood what it really meant. The Council was not just angry with humanity. They were afraid, and scared people did stupid things. She called an emergency meeting with all the top leaders on Earth. President Chen was there, along with the head of the military, the chief scientist, and the directors of all the major space agencies. They sat around a table in a secure room deep under the mountains of Colorado, and they tried to figure out what to do next. "They want us to be quiet," Elena said. "They want us to sit in our corner and think about what we did wrong. They think that if they ignore us long enough, we will come crawling back and promise to be good little humans who follow all their rules." "So what do we do?" asked General Morrison. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his days as a fighter pilot. "Do we try to make peace? Send them an apology and promise to do better?" Elena looked around the table at all the faces staring at her. These were smart people, brave people, people who had helped humanity reach for the stars. And in their eyes, she saw something that made her smile for the first time in days. She saw anger. Clean, pure anger at being treated like children who did not know better. "No," Elena said quietly. "We do not apologize, we do not beg. If they want us to be silent, then we will be silent. But we will be silent in our own way." President Chen leaned forward. She was younger than Elena, with short black hair and the kind of calm presence that made people want to follow her. "What are you thinking, Elena?" "I am thinking that they just gave us the greatest gift they could possibly give us," Elena said. "They cut us loose. No more rules about what technology we can research. No more limits on where we can go or what we can build. No more council. Observers telling us that we are doing things wrong." She stood up and walked to the big screen on the wall. With a few touches, she brought up a map of the galaxy. Human colonies showed up as blue dots, scattered across a relatively small area of space. Council worlds were red dots, and there were thousands of them. For 50 years we have been trying to fit in, Elena said. We have been trying to be good citizens of their galaxy. We have followed their rules and asked their permission and begged for their approval. And where did it get us? She touched the screen, and the blue dots started to blink. Nowhere, she continued. We are still the new kids. Still the ones who have to prove ourselves. Still the ones who get told to sit down and be quiet when the adults are talking. General Morrison was starting to smile. So we stopped trying to fit in? Exactly, Elena said. If they want to treat us like we do not exist, then we do not exist. We disappear. We become so quiet that they forget we are even here. And then? President Chen asked. Elena's smile got bigger and colder. And then we show up again when they least expect it. But next time, we will not be the scared little humans asking for permission. Next time, we will be something else entirely. The room fell silent as everyone thought about what that meant. They were talking about cutting humanity off from the rest of the galaxy, about going their own way completely. It was dangerous. It was risky. It might fail completely. It was also the most exciting thing any of them had ever considered. I need to know, Elena said. Are we all in agreement? Do we go silent? One by one, they nodded. The decision was made. Within a month, every human ship had pulled back from Council space. Every diplomatic mission was closed. Every trade agreement was canceled. But humanity did not go home and hide. Instead, they did something the Council never expected. They started to grow. Without Council rules limiting their research, human scientists began working on projects that had been forbidden for decades. Without Council observers watching their every move, human engineers started building things that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Without Council pressure to conform, human explorers started looking for new worlds and parts of the galaxy that no one had ever seen. The Council had wanted humanity to be silent. They were about to learn that when humans went quiet, it meant they were working on something big, something the galaxy had never seen before, something that would change everything. 5 years had passed since the Council cut off all contact with humanity. 5 years of silence from the human colonies. 5 years of wondering what the stubborn species was doing out there in their corner of the galaxy. If the Council members had known the truth, they would not have slept well. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in front of a massive window looking out at something that should not have been possible. Outside, in the empty space between stars, a structure was taking shape that was bigger than most moons. It was not built from metal or stone like the ships and stations the Council knew. Instead, it seemed to be made from crystallized space itself, twisted and folded into impossible shapes that hurt to look at directly. How long until the next phase is complete? Elena asked. She was talking to Dr. James Park, a young scientist who had been working on theoretical physics before the Council decided to ignore humanity. Now he was the lead designer of humanity's most ambitious project. 3 more months, James replied. He looked tired but excited. His hair was longer than it used to be, and there were dark circles under his eyes from too many late nights. But his eyes were bright with the kind of excitement that comes from discovering something completely new. We have figured out how to fold space in 7 dimensions now. Once we can do it in 11, we will be ready for the first test. Elena nodded. Around them, thousands of humans were working on the project. Some were engineers building components that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Others were mathematicians solving equations that described how reality worked when you stopped accepting that it had to follow the old rules. Still others were pilots training to fly ships that could step outside normal space and appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. What about the other projects? Elena asked. James pulled up a holographic display that showed dozens of human colonies scattered across their part of the galaxy. Each one had a different color, showing what kind of research they were doing. New Singapore has cracked the consciousness transfer problem, he said, pointing to a green dot. They can copy a human mind completely and put it into any kind of body they want. Mechanical, biological, or even pure energy. The volunteers are calling themselves the Eternal Core. Elena raised an eyebrow. Volunteers? Lots of them, James confirmed. Turns out that when you offer people the chance to live forever and explore the universe in bodies that can survive anything, they get excited. We have a waiting list of over 10,000 people. He pointed to another dot, this one colored blue. New Geneva has solved the resource problem. They can convert any kind of matter into any other kind of matter at the quantum level. Want to turn a rock into gold? Easy. Want to turn space dust into food? No problem. Want to turn empty space into solid neutronium armor? They did that yesterday. Elena was quiet for a moment. When the Council had cut them off, humanity had lost access to the vast trade networks that supplied their colonies with everything they needed. Food, medicine, raw materials, technology, all of it had been cut off overnight. The Council had probably expected human colonies to start failing within months. Instead, humans had done what they always did when faced with an impossible problem. They had gotten creative. "Show me the military projects," Elena said. James hesitated. This was the part that even he found a little scary. Titan Base has been working on what they call weaponized physics. They have built guns that shoot black holes, missiles that exist in 17 dimensions at once, so they cannot be stopped by any known defense. Armor that makes matter forget how to interact with other matter. He pulled up another display. The Spartan Corps has been developing enhanced soldiers, not just stronger and faster, but soldiers who can survive in any environment. Soldiers who can think faster than computers. Soldiers who can regenerate from almost any injury. How enhanced are we talking about? Elena asked. Yesterday, a Spartan trooper arm wrestled a mining robot and won, James said quietly. Last week, one of them ran through a wall. Not around it, through it. The wall forgot he was supposed to be solid while he was passing through. Elena stared at the display for a long time. Humanity had been working on these projects for only 5 years. But they had made progress that should have taken centuries. The Council had assumed that cutting humans off from galactic civilization would slow them down. Instead, it had removed all the limits that had been holding them back. What about contact with other species? Elena asked. Non-Council species? James smiled for the first time that day. That has been our biggest success. It turns out that there are hundreds of species out there that the Council ignores because they are not advanced enough. We have been trading with them, sharing technology, building alliances. He changed the display to show a much larger map of the galaxy. Now there were thousands of dots and dozens of different colors, scattered everywhere. The Yithrak are master, biotechnicians, but the Council thinks they are primitive because they grow their technology instead of building it. They have been teaching us how to make living ships that can repair themselves and evolve to meet new challenges. Another cluster of dots lit up. The Nethys Collective are energy beings that the Council dismisses because they do not have physical bodies. They have been showing us how to store consciousness in pure energy and how to manipulate matter with thought alone. More dots appeared. The Corvain build with gravity the way we build with metal. The Zalari can see through time and have been helping us understand how to predict the future. The Makari can fold space like origami and have been teaching us their techniques. Elena felt a cold smile spreading across her face. How many allies do we have now? Over 300 species, James said. Most of them small, most of them ignored by the Council. But together they control almost half the galaxy. And they all remember that humanity was the first species to treat them as equals instead of primitives. The picture was becoming clear. While the Council thought they had isolated humanity, humans had actually been building their own network. A network of species that the Council had dismissed or ignored. A network that was growing stronger every day. There is one more thing, James said quietly. We intercepted some Council communications last month. They are starting to worry about us. Worry how? James pulled up a new display that showed Council space. 3 of their border colonies have gone silent in the last year. No distress calls, no signs of battle, no wreckage. They just stopped responding to communications one day. Elena frowned. Are we responsible for that? No, James said quickly. But the council thinks we might be. They are starting to send scout ships to investigate what we have been doing out here. So far they have not found much because we have been very careful to stay hidden, but they are getting nervous. Good, Elena said. Let them be nervous. Let them wonder what we have been doing with 5 years of freedom. She turned away from the window and walked toward the center of the station. Around her, the impossible architecture twisted and folded in ways that human eyes were only just learning to see. 5 years ago, this station could not have been built with any known technology. Now it was just one of dozens like it scattered across human space. I want you to send a message to all colony commanders, Elena said. Tell them it is time for Phase 2. What is Phase 2? James asked. Elena's smile got colder. Phase 1 was hiding and getting stronger. Phase 2 is letting the council know we are still here. Not with words. Words are cheap, and the council has already shown they do not want to listen to our words. She stopped walking and turned to face James. Send out the exploration fleets. I want human ships at the edge of council space within the month. Not crossing the borders, not making contact, just sitting there where they can be seen. Let the council get a good look at what 5 years of human engineering can accomplish. James nodded, but he looked worried. Are we ready for a confrontation? If the council decides we are a threat, then they will finally be right about something, Elena interrupted. We are a threat. We are a threat to their comfortable little system where they make all the rules and everyone else follows them. We are a threat to their belief that they are the most advanced species in the galaxy. We are a threat to their assumption that they can treat other species like children and never face any consequences. She started walking again, her footsteps echoing in the impossible corridors of the station. But we are not going to attack them. We are not going to invade their space or destroy their colonies. We are just going to exist, loudly and obviously in a way that makes it clear that we are not the same species they tried to silence 5 years ago. And if they decide to attack us? Elena stopped at a massive door that led to the command center of the station. Before she opened it, she looked back at James one more time. Then they will learn why silence was never about being afraid, she said. It was about getting ready. The door slid open, revealing a room filled with humans working at control stations that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. On the main screen, a map of the galaxy showed the positions of every human ship, every allied fleet, every council world. Status report, Elena called out as she entered the room. All colonies report ready for Phase 2, came the reply from a dozen different voices. The exploration fleets are standing by. The new ships are fully tested and operational. Allied species are in position. Elena nodded and took her place at the central command station. Around her, displays showed technologies that would have seemed like magic just 5 years ago. Ships that could step outside reality and appear anywhere instantly. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. Armor that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Let's remind the galaxy that humanity is still here. Across human space, ships began to move. Not the crude, slow vessels that the Council remembered from 5 years ago, but sleek impossibilities that bent space around them like living creatures. They moved toward the borders of Council space with a purpose that was both patient and unstoppable. The Council had wanted humanity to be silent. They had gotten their wish. But now the silence was ending. And what emerged from it was something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would make the Council wish they had tried harder to be friends. In the middle of the chaos, Zektar felt something that made his blood freeze in his veins. The emotions coming from the strange ships were not anger or hatred or the desire for conquest. They were calm, patient, and absolutely confident. These beings, whoever they were, knew they could destroy the Council station any time they wanted. They were choosing not to. For now. "High Counselor on deck," someone shouted, and the crowd parted to let the Zal through. The gray-skinned alien leader looked older than Zektar had ever seen him, his forearms shaking slightly as he stared at the ships. "What are they?" Thaxal demanded. "Where did they come from?" "Unknown, sir," replied the station commander. They appeared without warning. Our sensors did not detect their approach. They seemed to be using technology we have never seen before. Thixal was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Zektar. You feel emotions across long distances. What do you sense from them? Zektar closed his eyes and extended his empathic senses toward the ships. What he felt made him step backward in shock. Humans, he whispered. Those are human ships. The observation deck fell silent. Everyone stared at Zektar as if he had lost his mind. Impossible, Thixal said. Humans do not have this technology. Humans cannot build ships like this. 6 years, Zektar said quietly. We have not seen them for 6 years. We have no idea what they have learned or built in that time. As if responding to his words, one of the ships moved closer to the station. As it approached, a section of its hull became transparent, revealing the bridge inside. Figures could be seen moving around what looked like control stations, and while the distance was too great to make out details, their basic shape was unmistakably human. They are requesting communication, the station commander reported. Audio and visual. The Axal hesitated. According to council law, communication with humanity was forbidden. But these ships had appeared in neutral space using technology that should not exist. The law suddenly seemed less important than finding out what had happened to the species they had tried to ignore. Open the channel, Thixal ordered. The main screen lit up with the image of a human woman. She looked to be middle-aged, with short dark hair and intelligent eyes. She wore a uniform that seemed to be made of the same impossible material as the ship's, fabric that existed in more dimensions than the eye could follow. High Counselor Thixal, the woman said. Her voice was calm and polite, but there was something underneath it that made Zektar's empathic senses tingle with warning. My name is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Federation. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but we received word that you might be having some trouble with the Kethmori. Thixal stared at the screen for a long moment. How did you know about the Kethmori? Admiral Chen smiled, and Zektar felt a chill run down his spine. It was not a cruel smile, but it was the smile of someone who knew many things that other people did not. We have been keeping an eye on galactic affairs, she said. When an ancient enemy returns using weapons that can erase matter from existence, word tends to spread quickly. We thought you might appreciate some assistance. Assistance? Thixal repeated. What assistance could humanity possibly provide? Admiral Chen's smile got a little wider. High Counselor, you have been isolated from human space for 6 years. You have no idea what we have become in that time. Perhaps it would be better if I showed you. She touched something outside the view of the camera, and space around the council station began to change. More ships appeared, hundreds of them, all using the same impossible technology. But these ships were not just advanced. They were works of art, shaped like living creatures and burning with energies that human science should not have been able to control. This is just one small fleet, Admiral Chen continued. We have many others scattered across this part of the galaxy. We have been preparing for the Kethmori's return for quite some time. Zektar felt the emotions radiating from Thixal and the other council members. Fear, shock, disbelief, and underneath it all, a growing understanding that the balance of power in the galaxy had changed completely. You were right to be concerned about us, Admiral Chen said. And now her voice carried just a hint of steel. But your concerns were pointed in the wrong direction. The question is not what humanity might do to the galaxy. The question is what the galaxy will do when humanity decides it has been ignored long enough. The transmission ended, leaving the council members staring at a blank screen surrounded by ships that represented technology beyond their understanding. In the silence that followed, Zektar heard Thixal whisper something that sounded like a prayer. The humans had returned, and they were not the same species that had been sent away 6 years ago. High Counselor 3XL had not slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those impossible human ships hanging in space around the council station like predators watching prey. When he finally managed to drift off, he dreamed. of Admiral Chen's calm smile and the quiet confidence in her voice when she said that humanity had been preparing. Preparing for what? The council was in chaos. Half the members wanted to immediately open diplomatic relations with humanity. The other half insisted that the humans were somehow responsible for the Kethmori attacks and should be destroyed before they could do more damage. Both groups were shouting at each other while the ancient enemy moved closer to the heart of council space every day. 3 more fleets had vanished in the past week. The Kethmori were no longer content to test council defenses at the rim of the galaxy. They were pushing deeper, using weapons that turned ships and entire space stations into nothing more than empty space. "We need to know what the humans have been doing," Luxal finally announced during an emergency council session. "We need to know how they built those ships and what other technology they have developed. Most importantly, we need to know if they can help us against the Kethmori." "You want to send a diplomatic mission to human space?" asked the Nexari representative. Her blue skin had gone pale with stress. "After we specifically voted to cut off all contact?" "The situation has changed," Thaxal replied. "The Kethmori are an extinction-level threat. If humanity has found a way to fight them, we need to know about it." Ambassador Zektar had been quiet during most of the debate, but now he stood up. "I volunteer to lead the mission to Earth." Several council members objected immediately. The Drakmor representative, his sharp teeth gleaming in the chamber's light, was the loudest. "Absolutely not. The Velthari are too sympathetic to humanity. We need someone who will be objective about their capabilities and their intentions." "With respect," Zektar replied, "I am the only council member who voted against the isolation in the first place. I am also the only one who has been warning you that humanity was more dangerous silent than they ever were when they were loud. Perhaps it is time to listen to someone who has been right about them from the beginning." The argument went on for hours, but in the end, practicality won over pride. Zektar was assigned to lead a small diplomatic mission to Earth. His orders were simple. Find out what humanity had been doing for the past 6 years and determine if they could be allies against the Kethmori. The mission ship was one of the Council's most advanced vessels, equipped with the best sensors and fastest engines available. It should have been able to reach Earth in 3 days. Instead, the journey took 2 weeks because they could not find Earth. "Check the navigation again," Zektar ordered as they sat in empty space where the Sol system should have been. "We are at the correct coordinates, but there is nothing here." The ship's captain, a nervous Kretal named Vorth, ran the scans for the 5th time. "Sir, the coordinates are correct. This is where Earth's solar system has been located for billions of years, but our sensors show empty space. No sun, no planets, no asteroid belt. Nothing." Zektar stared at the sensor readings. That made no sense. A star system could not just disappear. Stars did not pack up and move to new locations. Planets did not decide to take vacations in other parts of the galaxy. "Expand the search," he ordered. "Look for any sign of human activity in nearby systems. Energy signatures, radio signals, anything that might tell us where they went." It took another week of searching before they found something. Not Earth, but a faint energy reading from a system 300 light-years away from where Earth was supposed to be. The reading was so strange that the ship's computer could not identify what kind of technology was producing it. "Set course. For those coordinates," Zektar ordered, "maximum speed." When they dropped out of hyperspace at the new location, every being on the ship fell silent with shock. Where they expected to find empty space, they discovered something that should not have been possible. A star system that contained not just planets but structures that were bigger than worlds. Rings of crystallized energy circled a blue sun that burned with impossible brightness. Space stations the size of moons floated in perfect formation, connected by streams of light that pulsed with data and power. And at the center of it all, a planet that Zektar recognized despite its impossible location. Earth. "How?" Captain Vorth whispered. "How did they move an entire solar system?" Before Zektar could answer, their ship's communication system activated without anyone touching the controls. The view screen lit up with the image of Admiral Chen, looking exactly as calm and confident as she had at the council station. Welcome to New Sol, Ambassador Zektar, she said with a smile. We have been expecting you. How did you know we were coming? Zektar asked. We have been watching Council space for some time, Admiral Chen replied. When we detected a Council ship heading toward Earth's old location, we assumed someone would eventually find their way here. Please, follow the navigation beacon we are transmitting. There is much to show you. A new signal appeared on their instruments, guiding them toward one of the massive ring structures orbiting the relocated Earth. As they flew closer, Zektar realized that the ring was not a solid structure. Instead, it was made of pure energy, somehow held in a stable pattern that defied everything he knew about physics. Admiral, Zektar said carefully, may I ask how you moved your solar system? Admiral Chen's smile got a little wider. That is a very good question, Ambassador, but the answer is complicated. It would be easier to show you in person. Their ship was guided to a docking bay that existed inside the energy ring. As they passed through what should have been empty space, the ship suddenly found itself in a vast chamber filled with breathable atmosphere. Ships of incredible design floated nearby, tended by beings that looked human, but somehow more than human. When Zektar stepped off his ship, he was met by Admiral Chen herself. She looked exactly as she had in the transmissions, but being near her made Zektar's empathic senses tingle with confusion. She felt human, but there were layers to her emotions that he had never encountered before. It was like looking at a simple drawing that somehow contained infinite depth. Welcome aboard Harmony Station, she said, gesturing to the impossible space around them. One of our smaller construction platforms. Would you like a tour? As they walked through corridors that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, Admiral Chen began to explain what humanity had accomplished in 6 years of isolation. The Council's greatest gift to us was cutting us off from all the rules and limitations that had been holding us back, she said. For decades, we had been told that certain technologies were too dangerous to research, certain theories were too radical to test, certain boundaries were too fundamental to cross. They stopped at a viewing window that showed the relocated Earth spinning slowly in the distance. But this was not the Earth that Zektar remembered. This world was covered in structures that seemed to grow like living things, reaching into space and connecting with similar structures on the system's other planets. So we crossed all of them, Admiral Chen continued. We discovered that reality is much more flexible than most species believe. Space and time are not fixed laws. They are more like guidelines that can be bent when you understand the underlying mathematics. You moved your entire solar system, Zektar said weakly. That was just the beginning, Admiral Chen replied. Once we figured out how to fold space in 11 dimensions, moving a star system became a simple engineering problem. Would you like to see what we consider a difficult problem? She led him to another viewing port, this one looking out into deep space. At first, Zektar saw nothing unusual. Then his eyes began to adjust, and he realized he was looking at something that could not possibly exist. Space itself was being woven into patterns like a vast tapestry. Stars were connected by threads of twisted spacetime that allowed instant travel between any 2 points. Entire regions of the galaxy had been restructured so that distance became meaningless. We call it the Quiet Empire, Admiral Chen said. 400 star systems connected by dimensional gateways. Travel time between the most distant worlds is measured in minutes, not years. We can move entire fleets from one side of our territory to the other, faster than most species can send a radio message. Zektar felt something that he had never experienced before in his long life. He felt small. His people had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, and they still thought that crossing the galaxy was an achievement that took generations. Humanity had been in space for barely a century, and they had already rewritten the basic rules of how the universe worked. How many of you are there now? He asked quietly. That is also a complicated question, Admiral Chen replied. We discovered that consciousness is not tied to biology as tightly as most people think. Some humans have chosen to transfer their minds into mechanical bodies that can survive any environment. Others have become pure energy beings who exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. She gestured to a group of beings working on nearby machinery. They looked human at first glance, but Zektar realized that some of them were made of living metal, while others seemed to be constructed from crystallized light. We also learned that death is more of a choice than a requirement. Admiral Chen continued. Anyone who wants to can be backed up and restored if their current body is destroyed. We have soldiers who have died in battle dozens of times and come back each time with all their memories intact. And the beings who chose to become energy? Zektar asked. They can take any form they want, or no form at all. Some of them are currently exploring other galaxies. Others are working on projects that exist in dimensions our original bodies could never access. They walked for another hour, and with each new section of the station, Zektar's understanding of what humanity had become grew more complete. These were not the same species that the Council had dismissed as primitive children. They had transcended most of the limitations that other species accepted as fundamental laws of existence. "Why are you showing me this?" Zektar finally asked. Admiral Chen stopped walking and turned to face him. For the first time since he had met her, her expression became serious. "Because the Keth Mori are not the only ancient enemy that is returning," she said. "Our deep space sensors have detected at least 3 other extinction-level threats moving toward this galaxy. The Council, as it currently exists, will not survive what is coming." She led him to a massive chamber where holographic displays showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of Keth Mori forces, but there were other colors as well. Purple dots showing something called the Void Swarm. Yellow dots indicating the presence of beings called the Reality Shapers. Green dots marking the approach of something that the display simply labeled as the Hunger. "Humanity learned something important during our years of silence," Admiral Chen said. "The galaxy does not need rulers. It needs gardeners. Beings who help other species grow and develop instead of keeping them trapped in artificial limitations." She touched the display, and it zoomed in to show Council space. The red dots were moving closer to the core worlds every day. "We are offering the Council a choice," Admiral Chen continued. "Accept us as true equals in a partnership to defend the galaxy, or face the coming threats alone. But we will not be ignored, dismissed, or treated like children ever again." Zektar stared at the display for a long time. The implications of what he was seeing were overwhelming. Humanity had not just become more advanced during their isolation. They had become something completely new, something that made the old power structures of the galaxy irrelevant. "What happens if the Council refuses your offer?" he asked. Admiral Chen's expression became unreadable. "Then we will defend our allies and let the Council defend itself. We will not stand by and watch innocent species be destroyed because of political pride, but we also will not waste our resources trying to save people who refuse to be saved." "And if the Council accepts?" "Then we work together to build something better than what came before. A galactic civilization based on cooperation instead of domination, growth instead of stagnation, innovation instead of tradition." She turned away from the display and looked directly at Zektar. "The choice is not really ours to make, Ambassador. We have already made our choice. We have chosen to become strong, enough to protect the things we care about. Now the Council has to choose whether they want to be among those things." As Zektar prepared to return to his ship with a report that would change everything, he realized that the galaxy was about to discover what happened when you pushed humanity into a corner and then forgot they were there. They had not been sulking in their isolation. They had been evolving, and now they were ready to show the galaxy what they had become. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the most chaotic meeting in the organization's 1,000-year history. Ambassador Zektar stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by angry voices speaking in dozens of different languages. The translation computers were working overtime, turning clicks and growls and musical tones into words that everyone could understand, but understanding the words did not make them any easier to accept. "Impossible," High Counselor Thaxal was saying for the 5th time. "You expect us to believe that humans move their entire solar system? That they can travel between stars instantly? That they have weapons that work in 17 dimensions? I expect you to believe what I saw with my own eyes." Zektar replied calmly. I walked through their stations. I spoke with their leaders. I watched their ships appear and disappear like they were stepping between different realities. The Drakmor representative, his sharp teeth gleaming in the chamber light, slammed one clawed hand on the table. Even if this is true, it changes nothing. Humans are still humans. They are still the arrogant children who refuse to follow the rules. Now they have dangerous toys, which makes them more dangerous, but not more trustworthy. They are offering to help us against the Kethmori, Zektar pointed out. After we cut off all contact with them for 6 years, they are still willing to fight beside us against a common enemy. A trap, hissed the Select delegate, her forked tongue tasting the air. They want us to trust them so they can strike when we are not expecting it. I say we attack them now, before they can become even more powerful. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some council members agreed with the Select. Others thought they should accept humanity's offer of alliance. A few suggested trying to negotiate from a position of strength, as if they still had any strength left to negotiate with. In the middle of the chaos, a new alarm began sounding. The emergency alert meant only one thing: enemy contact. Report, the Ixal shouted over the noise. The station commander's voice came through the speakers, tight with fear. High Counselor, we have Kethmori forces dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 15 ships, unknown configuration. They are heading directly for the station. The chamber fell silent. 15 Kethmori ships was more than had ever been seen in one place before. The council station had defenses, but they were designed to protect against normal weapons. Against enemies that could make matter forget how to exist. The station's shields and armor might as well have been made of paper. How long until they reach us? Thexal asked. 18 minutes at current speed, came the reply. Signal all nearby council fleets, Thexal ordered. Tell them we need immediate assistance. Sir, the nearest fleet is 4 hours away. The next closest is 6 hours. 18 minutes. That was how long the Galactic Council had left to exist. The council members looked at each other with the kind of fear that comes from knowing you are about to die. Some of them were already calling their homeworlds to say goodbye. Others were trying to find escape routes off the station. Ambassador Zektar was doing something different. He was opening a communication channel to human space. What are you doing? Thexal demanded. What we should have done 6 years ago, Zektar replied. I am asking for help. The channel opened, and Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly as calm as she had during their meeting, as if she had been expecting this call. Admiral, Zektar said quickly, we have 15 Kethmori ships approaching the council station. We need immediate assistance. Admiral Chen nodded. We know. We have been tracking the Kethmori fleet since it entered this sector. Are you officially requesting aid from the Earth Federation? Thexal pushed forward, his forearms waving frantically. Yes, we are requesting aid. Please, you have to help us. High Counselor, Admiral Chen said with that same calm smile. 6 years ago, you voted to cut off all contact with humanity. You told us we were unworthy of galactic citizenship. You said we should not contact you again until we learned to follow the rules and respect our betters. Thexal's gray skin went even paler. That was a mistake. We were wrong. Please, we need your help. I am not saying no, Admiral Chen replied, but I need to be clear about what kind of relationship we will have going forward. Humanity will not return to the old system where the Council makes rules and everyone else follows them. We will not accept being treated as junior partners or probationary members. If we help you today, it will be as equals working together, not as subjects serving their superiors. Around the Council chamber, members were nodding frantically. Pride and tradition seemed much less important when extinction was 18 minutes away. Yes, Thexal said. Equals. Partners. Whatever you want. Just please help us. Admiral Chen's smile became warmer. In that case, help is already on the way. View screen switched to an external view of space around the Council station. At first, nothing seemed to have changed. Then the stars began to move. It took Zektar a moment to realize what he was seeing. The stars were not moving. Space itself was folding, bringing distant points closer together. In seconds, the empty space around the council station filled with human ships. But these were not the same ships that had visited the station weeks earlier. These vessels were clearly built for war. They moved like living predators, their hulls shifting and flowing as they adapted to new configurations. Some of them seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, flickering in and out of normal space, like deadly ghosts. "Admiral," Zektar said in amazement, "how many ships do you have currently in this system?" Admiral Chen checked something outside the view of the camera. "About 300. We have more standing by if needed." 300. Ships had appeared in seconds. The Council's best fleets took hours to assemble that many vessels, and they could not move them across the galaxy instantly. The Kethmori ships were still approaching the station, their dark hulls reflecting no light as they slid through space, like holes cut in reality. They seemed completely unaware that the situation had changed. "All human vessels," Admiral Chen's voice came through the station's communication system. "You are authorized to engage. Protect the Council station and show our new partners what 6 years of preparation can accomplish." What happened next was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The human ships moved faster than anything Zektar had ever seen. They did not accelerate or change course like normal vessels. Instead, they simply appeared in new positions, as if they were editing reality to put themselves wherever they wanted to be. The Kethmori ships fired their reality-warping weapons, the same weapons that had erased dozens of Council fleets from existence. The energy beams that could make matter forget how to exist struck the human ships directly. Nothing happened. The human vessels absorbed the attacks without any visible damage. Their hulls seemed to exist in so many dimensions that erasing them from just 3 dimensions had no effect at all. Then the humans fired back. Their weapons were unlike anything in Council records. Instead of energy beams or missiles, they fired what looked like compressed mathematics. Equations that rewrote the laws of physics in small areas of space. Reality itself became a weapon in human hands. The first Kethmori ship was struck by something that made it age 10 billion years in the space of a heartbeat. It crumbled to dust in seconds as entropy caught up with it all at once. The second ship was hit by a weapon that convinced its molecules that they wanted to be somewhere else. The vessel simply came apart as its own atoms decided to explore other parts of the galaxy. The third ship encountered a beam that made it exist in reverse. It unbuilt itself, returning to the raw materials it had been made from thousands of years earlier. In less than 6 minutes, all 15 Kethmori ships had been destroyed. Not damaged, not disabled, but completely eliminated using weapons that treated the fundamental forces of the universe like tools in a workshop. The Council chamber was silent as everyone stared at the view screen showing empty space where an unstoppable enemy fleet had been moments before. "Admiral," Thexal said weakly, "what were those weapons?" "Basic physics manipulation," Admiral Chen replied as if she were discussing the weather. The Kethmori's mistake was assuming that reality has to follow the same rules everywhere. Once you understand that those rules are more like suggestions, it becomes much easier to deal with enemies who depend on them. She paused, looking directly at the camera. "Of course, we have much more advanced weapons available if needed, but there was no point in showing off against such a simple threat." Simple threat. The Kethmori had been an extinction-level danger to the Council, and humans considered them a simple threat. "The immediate crisis is over," Admiral Chen continued, "but we need to discuss long-term solutions. The Kethmori were just scouts. The main invasion force is still coming, along with several other enemies that make them look like children with toys." The view screen changed to show a map of the galaxy with multiple hostile forces approaching from different directions. The Void Swarm was moving in from the galactic north. The Reality Shapers were approaching from the east. Something called the Hunger was coming from the galactic core itself. "The old Council structure cannot handle threats of this magnitude," Admiral Chen said bluntly. "You have spent too much time maintaining the status quo and not enough time preparing for real dangers. If we are going to survive what is coming, we need a new approach." "What do you suggest?" Zektar asked. "Dissolution of the current Council," Admiral Chen replied. "In its place, we establish a true federation where every species contributes according to their strengths, instead of being ranked in order of who has been spacefaring the longest." Humanity will provide military protection and advanced technology. Other species can contribute their own specialties. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. But this is not a negotiation where we ask for your permission. This is us informing you of how things are going to work from now on. The old system failed to protect the galaxy from the threats that are coming. The new system will not fail. High Counselor Thuxal stood up slowly. His forearms were shaking, but not with fear anymore. He was shaking with the realization that everything he had believed about the galaxy was wrong. The Galactic Council officially dissolves itself, he announced. Long live the Galactic Federation. One by one, the other council members stood and repeated the words. Some of them looked relieved to be giving up the burden of leadership to someone more capable. Others looked angry at being forced to accept a junior role in the new order. But all of them understood that they had no choice. Humanity had tried to be good citizens of the galaxy for 50 years. They had followed the rules, asked for permission, and accepted being treated like children. When that approach failed, they had gone silent and built something better. Now they were back, and they were not asking for anything. They were simply telling the galaxy how things were going to be from now on. Over the following months, the transition was surprisingly smooth. Most species discovered that humans made better leaders than the old council had. Instead of maintaining arbitrary rules and ancient traditions, the new Federation focused on practical solutions to real problems. The Velthari became the diplomatic corps, using their empathic abilities to help different species understand each other. The Kretal took charge of biological research, sharing their knowledge of how to grow technology instead of building it. Even the warlike Drakmor found a place as elite shock troops in the Federation military. But the humans remained at the center of it all. The quiet gardeners who helped other species grow while making sure that no threat could ever again catch the galaxy unprepared. In the deepest archives of the new Federation, a single message was recorded for future generations. We tried to tell them they were making a mistake. They just would not listen. Next time when someone offers you friendship, do not make them prove they deserve it, because by the time the proof arrives, the friendship may have evolved into something else entirely. The galaxy had learned to listen, finally. The day after their test, the colony was buzzing with rumors. The sight of Dominion speakers falling to their knees, their sacred markings dark and lifeless, had sent shockwaves through both communities. Some colonists whispered of divine punishment, others of technical malfunctions. No one suspected the truth. Jack and his crew gathered in the cargo hold of the Fang, doors sealed and sensors scanning for listening devices. Paranoia was now their constant companion. They're searching for answers, Mira reported, having just returned from the colony center. The Dominion has brought in 3 more ships. They're calling it a divine investigation. Are we suspects? Tom asked, nervously tapping a wrench against his palm. Not specifically, Mira replied, but they're questioning everyone who has access to ships or long-range communication equipment. That's half the colony, Doc noted. Jack paced the small space, thinking. We need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more likely they'll find silence. Moving quickly gets people killed, Doc cautioned. We still don't fully understand the ship's systems. One wrong move and we could permanently damage the network. Or ourselves, Tom added. That power source isn't exactly stable. Jack stopped pacing. What's our timeline on getting silence, operational? Mira consulted her notes. The navigation system is partially restored. Life support is stable. The main propulsion system, that's trickier. Tom thinks 2 more weeks minimum. We don't have 2 weeks, Jack said firmly. The Dominion is already limiting food shipments as punishment for what they're calling spiritual interference. If we don't act soon, people will start going hungry. Tom sighed and stood up. I can try to speed things up, but I'll need help, and we'll need to move more equipment from the colony without drawing attention. I'll handle that, Jack decided. Doc, continue working on understanding the network. Mira, you help Tom with the engines. We meet at Silence tomorrow at first light. The group dispersed, each with their tasks. Jack headed to the colony markets, where he could often pick up useful information along with supplies. The central square was busier than usual. with Dominion guards posted at every corner. Their slender forms and expressionless faces stood in stark contrast to the weathered, emotional humans they watched. At his favorite equipment stall, Jack found the owner, an older man named Pete, arguing with a Dominion official. "This scanner is basic mining equipment," Pete insisted. "It's been approved for colony use for years." The Dominion official, a lower-ranked technician rather than a speaker, scanned the device again. "New restrictions. This scanner can detect energy patterns beyond your authorized technological level." "How are we supposed to find ore deposits without proper equipment?" Pete demanded. "Manual labor is appropriate for your species' development stage," the technician replied coldly, confiscating the scanner. "The divine mandate is clear." As the official moved on, Pete noticed Jack watching. "Can you believe this garbage?" he muttered. "Yesterday they took all our atmospheric analyzers. Today it's mining equipment. Tomorrow they'll probably ban wheels for being too advanced." Jack nodded sympathetically while examining a pile of tools. "I need some specialized equipment for the Fang. Having trouble with the cooling systems." Pete glanced around before leaning in. "Come back after sunset. I've got some things hidden away. Good stuff. Pre-restriction. It'll cost you, though." "I'll be here," Jack promised. That night, Jack returned with a bag of rare minerals they'd collected during their last official mining run. The exchange was quick and nervous, both men aware of the consequences if caught. Jack left with a bag of tools that would help Tom restore Silence's engines, tools the Dominion had recently classified as spiritually corrupting for human use. The next morning, Jack arrived at Silence to find Tom and Mira already hard at work. The ancient ship's engine room was a marvel of engineering, with systems that seemed to flow organically into one another rather than being assembled from discrete parts. "We've made progress," Tom reported, his face streaked with grease. "The main power couplings are responsive. We had to bypass 3 damaged sections, but the core is stable." "What about propulsion?" Jack asked. Mira gestured to a pulsing blue cylinder in the center of the room. "That's not like any engine I've ever seen. It doesn't burn fuel. It manipulates space itself." "Can we fly it?" Jack pressed. "Theoretically," Tom replied. "But there's no guarantee we'll be able to stop once we start." Doc appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "We have another problem. I've been monitoring Dominion communications. They've tracked the source of the disruption to this general area of the asteroid belt. They're sending a search team." Jack swore under his breath. "How long do we have?" 2 days, maybe less," Doc answered. "Then we work through the night," Jack decided. "Tom, focus only on the essential systems, propulsion and the network disruptors. Mira, transfer all the data we've gathered to the Fang's computers as a backup. Doc, keep monitoring their communications and see if you can slow them down somehow." For the next 48 hours, they worked relentlessly. Sleep came in short bursts. Meals were forgotten, and every moment was filled with the urgency of their task. Tom performed mechanical miracles, Mira decoded complex alien programming languages, and Doc provided crucial insights into the network they aimed to disrupt. On the morning of the 3rd day, exhausted but determined, they gathered on Silence's bridge. "The engines are online," Tom reported. "Not pretty, but functional. The navigation system is, well, alien," Mira admitted. "But I think I understand the basics." "What about the disruptor?" Jack asked. Doc pointed to a modified console where they had integrated some of their own technology with the ancient systems. "It's ready for a full-scale test, but Jack, we need to be clear about what this means. If we use this at full power, we won't just be interrupting the speaker's connection to their gods for a few seconds. We'll be attacking the entire network." "Good," Jack said firmly. "It's time the Dominion learned what it feels like to have their beliefs challenged." "This goes beyond challenging beliefs," Doc cautioned. "Their entire society is built around those connections. We could be causing a civilization-wide crisis." "They're already causing a crisis for us," Jack replied. "Every day they tighten their restrictions. Every day our people go with less food, less medicine, less freedom. All because some artificial intelligence from thousands of years ago decided we're savages unworthy of equality. No one argued with him. They had all seen the effects of Dominion rule, the slow strangulation of human potential. How do we do this without exposing ourselves? Mira asked. The moment we activate the disruptor at full power, they'll know exactly where we are. We don't hide, Jack said. We run. We activate the disruptor, then immediately jump to light speed. We head for the Dominion Central Worlds. Tom's eyes widened. You want to take the fight directly to them? That's suicide. It's the last thing they'll expect, Jack explained. They see us as cowering savages. They won't be prepared for us to attack the heart of their civilization. Even if we succeed, Doc said slowly, even if we reach their central worlds and disrupt their entire network, what then? They have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. Without guidance from their gods, those ships and soldiers will be in chaos, Jack pointed out. And chaos creates opportunity. A warning alarm blared from their sensors. Mira checked the readings and looked up with alarm. Dominion search vessels, 3 of them, approaching fast. They found us. Earlier than expected, Jack muttered. Everyone to your stations. Tom, are the engines really ready? Tom nodded, though uncertainty flashed in his eyes. As ready as they'll ever be. Mira, plot a course away from reach. I don't want the colony blamed for this. She hurried to the navigation console, fingers flying over the alien controls. Doc, prepare the disruptor. Low power at first. Let's not show our full hand immediately. As the crew rushed to comply, Jack took the pilot's position. The control interface was strange, responding more to intention than physical input, but he adapted quickly. Outside, the 3 Dominion ships grew larger on their sensors, sleek predators, closing in on prey. They're hailing us, Mira reported. Jack smiled grimly. Let them talk. They've had enough time to give orders. He looked around at his crew, friends who had become family, united in their defiance of those who called them savages. Let's show them what savages can really do, he said, and activated Silence's ancient engines. The ship responded with surprising grace, sliding away from its hiding place among the asteroids. The Dominion vessels immediately changed course to intercept. Disruptor charged, Doc announced. Jack nodded. On my mark, now. A pulse of energy unlike anything they had ever witnessed erupted from Silence, spreading outward in a wave that distorted the very fabric of space. The effect on the pursuing Dominion ships was immediate and dramatic. They faltered, drifting off course as their systems, and their speakers, lost connection to the network they depended on. Full power to engines, Jack ordered. Let's go. Cut out some gods' tongues. Silence leapt forward, leaving the disabled Dominion ships behind as it accelerated toward the stars, carrying its human crew and their dangerous knowledge into the heart of their oppressor's domain. For 3 weeks, Jack and his crew kept the ancient ship a secret. They made regular supply runs to maintain appearances, bringing back just enough resources to avoid suspicion from the Colony Council. But every spare moment was spent aboard. The derelict, which they had nicknamed Silence for the way sound seemed to die within its strange corridors. I think I figured out part of their language, Mira said one day. She was hunched over a portable computer, cross-referencing symbols from the ship's console with patterns they had documented throughout the vessel. Jack looked over her shoulder. Can you read any of it? Not exactly red, she replied. But I'm starting to understand the logic. It's not like any human or Dominion language. It's mathematical, pure logic. Tom entered the chamber they had designated as their workspace, carrying a piece of machinery. Found this in what I think was an engine room. The technology is incredible. It uses principles we haven't even theorized yet. Doc followed behind, his expression troubled. We need to talk about the ship's power source. It's still functioning after thousands of years, which should be impossible by any standard we understand. Jack nodded. What's keeping it running? That's just it, Doc said. The energy signature, it's similar to what the Dominion speakers use to communicate with their gods. A heavy silence fell over the group. Are you saying this ship is connected to the Dominion's religion? Jack asked finally. Not exactly, Doc replied. I'm saying this ship might help us understand what their gods really are. Mira's computer chimed, drawing their attention. I've managed to activate more of the main console, she said. Look at this. The holographic display above the console expanded, showing a complex network of light points connected by pulsing lines. At various intersections, larger nodes glowed, with particular intensity. It's a communication network, Mira explained. And these bright spots, they're receiving and transmitting massive amounts of data. To where? Jack asked. That's the thing, Mira said. These coordinates match known Dominion holy sites, places where their speakers supposedly commune with their gods. Tom whistled low. You think their gods are talking through this network? I think, Doc said carefully, that their gods might be this network. Jack stared at the display, the implications slowly sinking in. An artificial intelligence network, he said finally. Ancient and advanced, guiding the Dominion civilization. Controlling it, Mira corrected. Look at these data patterns. They're not suggestions, they're directives, commands. Before they could discuss further, an alarm sounded from the Fang. They had left a connection to the ship's systems active, at all times. Dominion patrol, Tom reported after checking the alert. Heading toward the colony, not us, but we should get back anyway. They returned to the Fang, minds reeling with their discovery. As they pulled away from Silence, carefully noting its coordinates, Jack made a decision. We need to understand more before we tell anyone, he said. If the Dominion's entire society is built around these gods that aren't gods at all, exposing, that could cause chaos. Or liberation, Doc countered. Depending on who learns the truth. The journey back to Reach was tense. As they approached the colony, they saw 3 sleek Dominion ships in orbit, more than the usual diplomatic delegation. Something's happening, Mira said, monitoring colony communications. The speakers have called an emergency meeting with the council. Jack landed the Fang at their usual pad and instructed the crew to act normal. Keep our findings quiet. I'll go to the meeting and find out what's happening. The colony center was busier than usual, with worried faces hurrying through the dusty streets. Jack slipped into the back of the council chamber just as the meeting began. 3 Dominion speakers stood at the front, their tall, slender forms, draped in flowing metallic garments that seemed to move with a life of their own. Their smooth, pale faces bore the characteristic markings of their rank, intricate patterns that glowed with soft blue light. The divine mandate has been updated, announced the lead speaker, its voice melodious but cold. Your expansion into the Western Territories must cease immediately. The gods have declared that area sacred. The colony leader, an older woman named Anna, stood firm. Those territories contain essential water sources for our growing population. We've already begun construction on. Your construction will stop, the speaker interrupted. The will of the gods is not negotiable. Those who defy divine mandate risk losing all protection and trading privileges. Jack felt anger rising within him. The Western Territories contained the richest farmland on Reach. Without it, the colony would struggle to feed itself, becoming even more dependent on Dominion trade that came with increasingly restrictive terms. After the meeting, Jack found Anna alone in her office, her face lined with worry. This is the 3rd restriction this month, she said when she saw him. First the mining limitations, then the technology ban, now this. They're slowly choking us, Jack. Have they given any real reason? He asked, careful not to reveal what he knew. Anna shook her head. Just divine mandate. We can't argue with their gods, can we? The bitterness in her voice was clear. What if their gods aren't what they claim? Jack said cautiously. Anna gave him a sharp look. Careful, Jack. That kind of talk is dangerous. The speakers have ways of knowing when we question their authority. Of course, he replied, just thinking aloud. He left the colony center and rejoined his crew at a quiet corner of the local tavern, where the noise would mask their conversation. It's getting worse, he told them. They're restricting access to the Western Territories now. That's where the best farmland is, Tom said. Without it, we become completely dependent on them, Mira finished. Classic control tactic. Doc leaned forward. While you were gone, I analyzed more of the data from Silence. The ship wasn't just built to communicate with the network. It was designed to disrupt it. Jack's eyes widened. You mean we could interfere with the messages from their gods? Potentially, Doc nodded. The ship contains technology that can intercept, decode, and even alter the signals. That would be seen as blasphemy by the Dominion, Mira warned. They'd destroy the entire colony in retaliation. Not if they don't know who's responsible, Jack countered. We need to test this. A small disruption, something that could be attributed to natural interference. They spent the next 2 days preparing. While the colony struggled to adjust to the new restrictions, Jack's crew returned to Silence with the equipment they needed. Doc and Mira worked to activate the ship's communication systems while Jack and Tom kept watch for Dominion patrols. I think we're ready, Doc announced finally. I've programmed it to create a brief disruption in the network, just 30 seconds. It should affect the nearest node, which happens to be on the Dominion ship currently in orbit around Reach. Will they be able to trace it? Jack asked. Unlikely, Mira replied. The technology is far beyond their understanding, ironically. They worship these systems without truly comprehending them. Jack took a deep breath. Do it. Doc activated the sequence. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the holographic display showed a ripple effect spreading through the network, centering on the node representing Reach. It's working, Mira whispered. Back at the colony, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The Dominion speakers, in the middle of another meeting with the Council, suddenly clutched their heads and fell to their knees. Their facial markings flickered and went dark. The voices, one speaker cried out. The gods are silent. Panic spread through the Dominion delegation. For 30 seconds, their connection to their gods, the guiding force of their entire civilization, was gone. When it returned, the speakers were visibly shaken. A test, the lead speaker announced, trying to regain composure. The gods test, our faith. But Jack and his crew, watching the aftermath from a distance, saw something else. They saw fear. They've never experienced silence before, Doc said quietly. Their entire lives they've had those voices guiding their every move. And now they know it can be taken away, Jack added, a grim smile forming on his face. We've found their weakness. What now? Tom asked. Jack looked toward the Dominion ships hovering in orbit, their sleek forms no longer seeming so intimidating. Now, he said, we learn how to cut out their gods' tongues for good. The red soil of Reach crunched under Jack's boots as he walked toward the landing pad. The colony had been established 20 years ago, but the ground still felt foreign beneath his feet. Above him, the twin moons hung like watchful eyes in the amber sky. Jack pulled his jacket tighter against the morning chill and squinted at the familiar shape of his ship in the distance. The Fang wasn't pretty. Its hull was patched in a dozen places, and its paint job had long since faded to a dull gray. But it was fast, and it was his. In the frontier colonies, that was all that mattered. Captain on deck, Tom called out with a grin as Jack climbed the ramp. Tom was Jack's oldest friend and the ship's engineer, a burly man with a wild beard and clever hands that could fix almost anything. Save it, Jack said, but he smiled anyway. Is everyone here? Mira's running final checks on the navigation system and Doc is loading the last of the supplies. Jack nodded and made his way to the bridge. The inside of the Fang was cramped but functional, with exposed wiring and pipes running along the ceiling. It wasn't fancy, but it kept them alive in the void. Mira looked up from the control panel as he entered. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical knot, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. Morning, Captain. We're cleared for takeoff in 20 minutes. Any word from the outpost at Sector 7? Jack asked, settling into the pilot's chair. Nothing new, she replied. Just the usual request to scan the asteroid belt for viable mining. Locations. Doc appeared at the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. He was the oldest of the crew, with gray hair and steady hands that had saved all their lives more than once. Medical supplies are loaded, though I don't know why the Colony Council thinks we can find better medicine in a bunch of floating rocks. Because they're desperate, Jack said simply. The Dominion's trade restrictions are getting tighter every month. The mention of the Dominion brought a somber mood to the bridge. The alien civilization had made contact with humanity 5 years ago, and their technological superiority had been immediately apparent. Their ships moved like liquid silver through space, and their weapons could disable a human vessel without leaving a mark. But it was their attitude that rankled most. To the Dominion, humans were primitives, savages barely worth acknowledging, except to restrict their movements and access to resources. "I heard they're sending another delegation to the colony tomorrow," Tom said as he joined them on the bridge. "Probably to explain how we're violating some other divine mandate we've never heard of." Jack frowned. The Dominion's ruling class, who called themselves the Speakers, claimed to commune directly with their gods. These gods supposedly guided their civilization and justified their dominance over lesser species like humans. "Let's just focus on the job," Jack said. "The colony needs resources the Dominion won't provide. We find them, we get paid, we eat for another month." The Fang lifted off smoothly, despite its age. Jack guided it through the thin atmosphere of Reach and into the blackness of space. The ship's engines hummed with reassuring familiarity as they set course for the asteroid belt at the edge of the star system. "ETA to the belt is 4 hours, Mira announced. "I've plotted a course to avoid the Dominion patrol routes." "Good," Jack replied. "Last thing we need is another inspection." The last time they'd encountered a Dominion patrol, the aliens had boarded the Fang and spent hours scanning every inch, looking for technology they deemed inappropriate for savage species. They'd confiscated a prototype scanner that Doc had been developing and lectured them about the proper path of technological development, as ordained by their gods. The journey to the asteroid belt passed in relative quiet. Tom tinkered with the engines, Doc inventoried their supplies, and Mira kept a watchful eye on the long-range scanners. Jack used the time to review the colony's needs: metals for construction, rare minerals for medicine, and water ice for the hydroponics facilities. "Approaching the belt," Mira called out eventually. "Starting initial scans." The view screen filled with the chaotic dance of the asteroid belt, chunks of rock and ice tumbling through the void in an eternal orbit around the distant sun. "I'm picking up something strange," Mira said suddenly, her fingers moving quickly across the control panel. "There's a large object in a stable orbit within the belt. It's not showing up as a natural formation." Jack leaned forward. "Dominion?" She shook her head. "No identifying signatures I recognize. It's old, really old, based on the radiation. Patterns. Put it on screen," Jack ordered. The image shifted, zooming in on what at first appeared to be just another asteroid. But as the image cleared, they could see that it wasn't a rock at all. It was a ship, or what remained of one. Its design was unlike anything Jack had seen before, neither human nor Dominion. The hull was dark and angular, with strange protrusions that might have once been weapons or sensors. "That's not possible," Doc whispered. "That ship design, it doesn't match any known configuration." "How long has it been there?" Jack asked. Mira ran more scans. "Based on the orbital decay, thousands of years, at minimum." Tom whistled low. "Before humans even left Earth. Before the Dominion claimed this sector." "Are there any active systems?" Jack asked. "Minimal power readings," Mira replied, "but something's still functioning in there after all this time." Jack stared at the ancient vessel floating silently among the asteroids. A decision formed in his mind, one that he knew might change everything. "Bring us alongside," he ordered. "We're going to dock." "Captain," Doc said carefully, "the colony is expecting us to return with resources." "And we will," Jack replied. "But first, I want to know what this is. The Dominion calls us savages because we lack their technology. What if this ship changes that equation?" No one argued further. They all felt it, the potential importance of their discovery. The Fang approached the derelict vessel cautiously. Up close, the alien design was even more apparent. The hull was made of a material none of them recognized, unmarred by the countless impacts it must have endured over millennia. "I've found what might be a docking port," Mira said. It's compatible with our systems, which doesn't make any sense. Unless it was designed to be universal, Doc suggested. A ship meant to connect with many different types of vessels. The docking procedure went surprisingly smoothly. The ancient airlock accepted their connection as if it had been waiting for them. Jack, Tom, and Doc suited up while Mira stayed aboard to monitor the Fang systems. The airlock cycled, and they stepped into the unknown. The interior of the derelict was dark and cold, their helmet lights cutting bright swaths through the blackness. The architecture was strange. Corridors that curved in unexpected ways and doorways sized for beings both larger and smaller than humans. "Look at this," Tom said, running a gloved hand over a panel covered in symbols. Some kind of written language, but nothing like Dominion script. "The air is thin but breathable," Doc reported, checking his scanner. "And there's minimal gravity, something still powering life support after all this time." They moved deeper into the vessel, recording everything they found. In what appeared to be the ship's bridge, they discovered a central console that still glowed with faint light. Jack approached it carefully. The surface responded to his proximity, symbols flowing across it like water. "It's welcoming us," he said in amazement. As if in response, a holographic display activated above the console. It showed a star map, but not of any configuration they recognized. Points of light connected in complex patterns with one pulsing dot that seemed to represent their current location. "This is beyond anything the colony has," Tom said. "Maybe even beyond the Dominion." Jack nodded slowly. "And it responded to us. Not to the Dominion that claims this sector, but to us, the savages." In that moment, Jack made a decision that would change the course of human history on Reach. "We don't tell anyone about this, not the Colony Council, and especially not the Dominion. We study it first, understand what we've found. The speakers claim their gods give them the right to rule," Doc said quietly. "What if this ship gives us a way to challenge that claim?" Jack's hand hovered over the ancient console, feeling the power of possibility. "Then maybe it's time to show them that savages can have sharp teeth too." The journey to the Dominion home system took 5 days. 5 days during which Jack and his crew pushed silence to its limits, learning its systems through trial and error. 5 days during which they intercepted dozens of Dominion communications, all speaking of the same thing: the spiritual attack in the Reach system and the missing human ship. "They don't understand what happened," Doc reported, listening to yet another panicked transmission. "The speakers are telling their people that evil spirits have possessed savage humans." "Easier than admitting their gods went silent," Mira commented from the navigation console. She had barely slept since they fled, constantly monitoring their course through unfamiliar space. Tom emerged from the engine room, wiping his hands on a rag. "The power core is stabilizing. I think I'm starting to understand how it works. It draws energy directly from subspace." "Can it handle another full disruption?" Jack asked. Tom hesitated. "Yes, but not repeatedly. Each use strains the system. We might get 3, maybe 4 big disruptions before the core fails." Jack nodded, absorbing this information. Their plan would need to be precise. No room for error. "What about the Dominion fleet?" he asked, turning to Mira. She pulled up a holographic display. "They're scrambling ships from every sector, creating a defensive perimeter around their central worlds. They know we're coming, but they don't know exactly where or when we'll arrive. Or what we're capable of," Doc added. "Their entire defense strategy assumes we're just primitive humans in a stolen ship." Jack studied the display, noting the concentration of ships around one particular planet, Lumina, the Dominion capital and home to their largest temple complex. According to the information they'd gathered, it was also the central hub of the AI network that posed as their gods. "We need to get to Lumina," Jack decided. "Not just close enough for a disruption, we need to land." The others stared at him, in disbelief. "Land? On the Dominion capital?" Tom exclaimed. "That's beyond risky. That's impossible." "The disruptions are temporary," Jack explained. "We've seen that. The network recovers, adapts. If we want to make a lasting change, we need to access the central hub. Even if we somehow get past their fleet, the surface defenses will destroy us before we land, Mira pointed out. Jack smiled. Not if all those defenses suddenly lose their connection to the guidance systems that control them. Understanding dawned on their faces. A targeted disruption, Doc said slowly. Not a broad wave like before, but focused specifically on their defense network. Exactly, Jack confirmed. We hit their defenses first, then make our approach while they're blind. They spent the next day preparing. Tom fine-tuned the disruption array with Doc's help, modifying it to focus on specific frequencies used by the Dominion defense systems. Mira plotted multiple approach vectors, looking for the path of least resistance. Jack studied every bit of information they had on Lumina, searching for a viable landing site close to the central temple. As they approached the outer perimeter of the Dominion home system, the ship's sensors detected the first wave of defenders, sleek patrol vessels, arranged in a perfect formation. They're hailing all approaching ships, Mira reported. Standard identification protocols. Ignore them, Jack ordered. Shields at maximum. Prepare the focused disruptor. The patrol vessels broke formation, moving to intercept the unidentified ship entering their space. Warning shots flashed across Silence's bow. Disruptor ready, Doc announced, his hand hovering over the activation control. Wait for my mark, Jack said, eyes fixed on the tactical display. He needed the perfect moment, when the maximum number of ships would be affected. The Dominion vessels moved closer, their weapons charging for a more serious attack. Communications flooded their receivers, demands to stop, identify, surrender, now, Jack commanded. Doc activated the disruptor. Unlike their previous use, this time the energy pulse was narrow, focused, directed specifically at the frequencies used by Dominion weapons and navigation systems. The effect was immediate. The approaching ships faltered, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos as their systems failed. Full power to engines, Jack ordered. Straight through their line. Silence shot forward, passing through the disoriented patrol fleet before they could recover. Alarms blared throughout the Dominion system as word of the breach spread. Ahead, they could see more ships moving to block their path. A second line of defense. Another disruption ready? Jack asked. Doc shook his head. The core needs time to recharge, 2 minutes minimum. Evasive maneuvers, Jack told Mira. Get us past them without a direct confrontation. Mira's hands danced across the controls, guiding Silence through a series of impossible turns and dives. The ship responded with surprising agility, as if it understood the urgency of their mission. Several Dominion vessels gave chase, but their weapons fire fell short or was absorbed by Silence's ancient shields. Core recharged, Doc reported as they cleared the second defensive line. Save it, Jack replied. We'll need it for the planetary defenses. Lumina grew larger on their view screen, a blue-green world surrounded by orbital platforms and defense satellites. Beyond it, the system's sun cast everything in a golden light that seemed cruelly beautiful given the danger they faced. Final approach vector locked in, Mira announced, taking us in toward the northern continent. That's where the main temple complex is located. Planetary defense is activating, Tom warned. Energy readings off the scale. They're throwing everything at us. Now, Doc, Jack ordered. Maximum focus on the orbital platforms. The disruptor fired again, its energy precisely calibrated to the frequencies used by Lumina's defense grid. The effect rippled outward, causing the orbital platforms to go dark one by one. On the surface, lights flickered across entire cities as the disruption affected ground-based systems as well. It's working, Mira said with wonder in her voice. Their entire defense network is failing, but their success was short-lived. The ship shuddered violently as a single energy beam struck their port side. Manual weapons, Tom shouted. They've got gunners using manual targeting. Another hit rocked the ship, sending sparks flying from several consoles. Shields down to 40%, Doc reported. We can't take much more of this. Jack gripped the control panel tightly. Stay on course, push the engines to maximum. Silence plunged toward the planet's surface, trailing smoke and debris. Behind them, Dominion ships gave chase, but most were still recovering from the disruption. Only a few managed to follow them into the atmosphere. Approaching the temple complex, Mira called out. But our landing options are limited with the damage we've taken. The vast temple complex spread out below them, its crystalline spires reaching toward the sky. At its center stood the largest structure, a perfect dome that gleamed with unnatural light. According to their research, this was the housing for the central node of the network, the heart of the Dominion's false gods. "Take us down right on top of the central dome," Jack ordered. Mira looked at him in shock. "That's not a landing. That's a crash." "Exactly," Jack replied grimly. "The disruptor won't be enough. We need to physically destroy the central node." Understanding and determination replaced the shock on Mira's face. She adjusted their course, aiming silence directly at the dome. "Impact in 30 seconds, she announced. "Everyone secure yourselves." They strapped into crash harnesses, bracing for impact. Outside, the few functioning Dominion defenses fired desperately at the descending ship, but it was too late to stop them. "Tom, divert all remaining power to the forward shields," Jack ordered. "Doc, prepare for a final disruption on impact." "Core ready," Doc confirmed. "On impact, it'll release everything it has left." Tom finished the power adjustments and looked around at his friends. "It's been an honor," he said simply. Jack nodded, his eyes fixed on the approaching dome. "For Reach," he said. "For all the colonies they called savage." "For freedom," Mira added. The temple complex filled their view screen, the central dome growing larger by the second. Around it, speakers and other Dominion officials fled in panic, their connection to their gods already weakening from the ship's proximity. "Brace for impact," Jack shouted as silence plunged toward its target. The ancient vessel struck the dome with catastrophic force, its shields flaring brilliantly as they absorbed the initial impact. The structure beneath them cracked and then collapsed, unable to withstand the tremendous energy. Doc triggered the final disruption as they crashed through, releasing a wave of energy that spread outward from the impact site. Throughout the Dominion, worlds, every speaker fell silent at once as their connection to the network was severed completely. For the first time in thousands of years, the gods of the darkness, pain, the taste of blood. These were Jack's first sensations as consciousness returned. He blinked, trying to clear his vision in the dim emergency lighting. Around him, the bridge of silence lay in ruins. Sparks flew from shattered control panels. Support beams had collapsed, the air was thick with smoke and dust. "Mira? Tom? Doc?" he called, his voice barely above a whisper. A groan came from his right. He turned to see Mira struggling to free herself from beneath a fallen section of ceiling. With effort, Jack unstrapped from his chair and crawled to her side. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping move the debris. "Been better," she managed. The others. Together they searched the wreckage, finding Tom unconscious but breathing near the engine room access. Doc was in worse shape, a deep gash across his forehead, but his pulse was steady when Jack checked. "We survived," Mira said in wonder, looking around at the destruction. "I didn't think any of us would." "Silence protected us," Jack replied. Its structure absorbed most of the impact. As if to confirm his words, they noticed the ship's hull had cracked open in several places, revealing the structure they had crashed into. Through one such opening, they could see the interior of the shattered temple dome. "We need to move," Jack decided. "The Dominion will send soldiers as soon as they recover from the disruption." "And go where?" Mira asked. "We're on their home world, thousands of light years from Reach. First, we find out if we succeeded," Jack said. "If the central node is destroyed, we've given ourselves a fighting chance." They roused Tom, who had a broken arm but could walk, and together they carried the still unconscious Doc toward the opening in the hull. The temple interior was vast and eerily silent. Crystalline structures that once glowed with power now lay, dark and broken. At the center, where silence had driven deepest, a massive apparatus was exposed, a sphere of impossible complexity, now shattered into thousands of fragments. "The central node," Tom whispered. "The heart of their god network." And, "We killed it," Mira added. "Not killed," came a weak voice. Doc had regained consciousness. "Freed." Jack helped him stand. "What do you mean?" "The network wasn't just controlling the Dominion," Doc explained, pointing to the scattered fragments. "It was being controlled itself. Look at those restraining fields. Those aren't designed to protect, they're designed to imprison." Before they could discuss further, the sound of approaching vehicles reached them. Jack led them to a hiding place behind a fallen column, where they could observe the temple entrance. The first to arrive weren't soldiers as expected, but lower caste Dominion citizens, the workers and servants who maintained the temple but were never allowed to speak directly to the gods. They entered cautiously, their simple clothes a stark contrast to the opulence around them. One, slightly taller than the rest, approached the wreckage of silence. Unlike the speakers, these Dominion citizens had no glowing markings on their faces. Their expressions were easy to read: confusion, fear, but also hope. "What are they doing?" Mira whispered. Jack shook his head, equally puzzled. More Dominion citizens were arriving by the minute, gathering around the crashed ship and shattered node. They spoke to each other in hushed tones. Then something unexpected happened. The tall one who had first approached the wreckage turned and addressed the growing crowd. "The silence is real," he announced, his voice carrying through the vast space. "For the first time in memory, we hear only our own thoughts. The gods speak no more." A murmur ran through the crowd, not panic but something closer to wonder. "All my life," the speaker continued, "I was told the gods spoke only to the speakers, that only they were worthy to hear divine wisdom, that the rest of us must obey without question. But now I think perhaps there were never any gods at all." Jack and his crew watched in amazement as the crowd responded not with anger or denial, but with growing excitement. More citizens arrived, including some from higher castes, their ornate clothing marking their status. Yet they joined the gathering as equals, all united in their new silence. "We should show ourselves," Jack decided. "Are you crazy?" Tom hissed. "They'll kill us." "I don't think so," Jack replied. "Look at them. They're not angry. They're liberated." Before the others could stop him, Jack stepped out from their hiding place. The reaction was immediate. The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to the injured human walking toward them. "I am Jack," he said simply, "from the human colony on Reach." The tall Dominion citizen who had spoken earlier stepped forward. "You did this," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Jack admitted. "We destroyed the network that your speakers called gods." He braced for anger, for violence. Instead, the Dominion citizen did something shocking. He bowed. "Then we owe you our freedom," he said. "For generations, the speakers have ruled us through their exclusive connection to the gods. They told us what to think, who to hate, how to live. They called you savages to make us fear you." Others from Jack's crew emerged from hiding, joining him before the crowd. "What happens now?" Mira asked. "Revolution," came a new voice. A female Dominion citizen pushed through the crowd. By her clothing, she had been part of a technical caste, just below the speakers in rank. "It's already beginning across the planet. The speakers have lost their power. Without the gods' guidance, the military is in disarray. Some are following their final orders, but many are standing down. The Dominion spans thousands of worlds," Jack pointed out. "Not all of them will welcome this change. Then we will need allies," the tall citizen replied, "perhaps starting with the humans who were brave enough to show us the truth." In the days that followed, the revolution spread like wildfire. The disruption of the central node had affected the entire network. Across the Dominion Empire, speakers found themselves unable to commune with their gods. Lower castes, long oppressed, seized the opportunity for freedom. Not all transitions were peaceful. On some worlds, loyal military forces fought to maintain the old order, but they were fighting without the strategic guidance they had relied on for centuries. Their coordination failed, their resolve weakened. Jack and his crew became unlikely diplomats, helping forge an alliance between the human colonies and the reforming Dominion society. Their knowledge of the ancient ship and its technology proved invaluable, as both species worked to understand the true history of the region. 1 month after the destruction of the central node, Jack stood on a balcony overlooking the former temple complex, now converted into a center of learning open to all citizens. Beside him stood Len, the tall Dominion citizen who had first welcomed them. The last of the loyal speaker forces surrendered on Terex 3 yesterday, Len reported. The revolution is nearly complete. And the colonies? Jack asked. All restrictions have been lifted, Len confirmed. The first joint human-Dominion research team arrived at Reach this morning. Jack nodded, satisfaction warming him, despite his still healing injuries. And silence? Our engineers have learned much from what remains. It appears the ship was built by the same civilization that created the network. Not as a weapon, but as a safeguard. A way to free the network if it ever became corrupted or misused, which it was, Jack said, for thousands of years. Yes, Len agreed. The network was meant to be a guide, a repository of knowledge from an ancient civilization. But the early speakers found a way to restrict access, to control what it said and who heard it. They turned a teacher into a master. Jack looked out at the city below, where humans and Dominion citizens now walked together. What will you call yourselves now? Dominion doesn't seem appropriate anymore. Len considered this. We are thinking, the free world's conquered. A bit grand, perhaps, but hopeful. I like it, Jack said. Better than savages, anyway. Len made the gesture that Jack had learned was the equivalent of a smile. Perhaps being a savage isn't so bad, if it means being brave enough to question gods. As the sun set over the city, Jack thought about the ship that had brought them here, the ancient vessel that had been waiting patiently among the asteroids for someone to find it, someone desperate enough or perhaps savage enough to use it. The network wasn't completely destroyed, he said thoughtfully. Just the controlling elements. Yes, Len confirmed. Our technicians believe it could be restored, as the teaching tool it was meant to be, accessible to all. Jack nodded, already thinking of the possibilities, of knowledge freely shared, of humans and the former Dominion working together, of exploring the stars without false gods or artificial limitations. Then, let's rebuild it, he said, together.